Genius Warlock. Chapter 321. Consequently, our royal lineage found themselves responsible for overseeing a significant faction of the kingdom's military. Philip Rohr conveyed, while seated opposite, his beard resembling a mane, which he stroked contemplatively. Oliver responded with an applauding gesture, genuinely impressed. That's truly remarkable. His sincerity was unmistakable. It was well justified, given that Philip's account of the Rohr family's history was undeniably captivating. Esteemed for their extraordinary mastery of magic, yet also constrained by its complexities, they emerged as the pioneering wizards capable of deciphering the temporal currents. With unwavering loyalty, they swore allegiance to the kingdom, becoming an integral facet of its identity. What magnified their feats was their unceasing ambition. Post-induction, their influence expanded far beyond mere neutralizers of human threats, evolving into the very heart of the establishment. They architected the indispensable paradigm of war wizards, erecting a specialized institution to nurture these enigmatic wizards, and conceiving revolutionary concepts such as a magical-based military framework, strategic doctrines woven with arcane intricacies, and an innovation system for enchanted weaponry. From being mere game pieces on the board, they transformed into the adept hands guiding those very pieces. Even Oliver, a novice in these matters, experienced more than a passing fascination with this narrative. Whenever uncertainty arose, he posed inquiries, seeking insight into their innovative process and the practical execution of their concepts. For instance, he probed into the genesis of their groundbreaking ideas and their translation into tangible actions. Thankfully, Philip Rohr graciously divulged the ancestral sagas passed down through generations. My great-grandfather recounted their assimilation into this art through direct engagement on the battlefield, alongside the foot soldiers. They grasped the needs of the troops, the challenges, the support indispensable for the warriors. That's precisely why every male in our lineage commences their journey with field work. Administrative prowess devoid of field knowledge remains naught but armchair conjecture. I might not be well versed, but doesn't that expose them to considerable danger? Indeed, danger is an ever-present companion. The battlefield wields mortality capriciously, irrespective of an individual's might. An ill-fated bullet spares no one. This lad right here had a brush with death once as well. Pointing towards Terence, who stood almost huddled beside him, Philip directed attention to the smaller-statured man. Although Terence possessed his own strength, it paled in comparison to Philip's imposing figure. He began, "Well, I once narrowly escaped danger, all thanks to Kevin." Terence's words were laden with sincerity, yet Kevin's response was tinged with a touch of bitterness. "I merely executed my duty. But it's undeniable that such individuals are rare." With finesse, Philip aligned with Kevin's sentiment while subtly dissenting. Yes. On a different note, shall we revisit our previous topic? What are you referring to? Kevin, are you involved with anyone romantically? Either for amusement or with thoughts of marriage? Kevin arched an eyebrow once again. It's futile. Just answer. Do you expect an old man to concern himself with a young man's emotions? Growing old brings its own melancholy, but there are moments when I'm grateful for it. Unabashedly, Philip spoke, eventually prompting Kevin's surrender. Sigh. No, I'm not. That's good to hear. What if I were to introduce you to my granddaughter? The 19th or 20th, I believe, is currently unattached. Oliver was taken aback. The revelation that Philip had 20 granddaughters was staggering enough, but his willingness to arrange an introduction for Kevin was even more astounding. This move was significantly bolder than those made by other wizards within the magic tower, according to Oliver's observations. That's an exceedingly generous offer. You're a capable wizard. It could be a favorable proposition for you, correct? You're of an appropriate age. The time has come to consider marriage and progeny, has it not? It's a rather traditional mindset. Why is matrimony and offspring considered old-fashioned? Regardless, I'm content as I am. I'm grateful for the gesture, but I must respectfully decline. Are you truly certain? Do you aspire to age alone, akin to your master? That's a sorrowful prospect, isn't it? Kevin remained silent, clearly vexed, and then glanced at Oliver, the catalyst for their current predicament. Philip's gaze shifted towards Oliver, and he unexpectedly proposed. Your name is Zenon, correct? Have you ever contemplated enlisting in the military? I apologize, but I have Mononull syndrome. Indeed, it's unfortunate. However, it isn't an impediment if you possess the skill. A man's worth hinges on capability, doesn't it? I've heard you're remarkably skilled. You single-handedly subdued train robbers, and you spar with Magic Tower students, don't you? Oliver was mildly surprised by Philip's extensive knowledge about him. I can merely defend myself. And you also adeptly instruct students, yes. Employing a technique from the distant eastern lands. It's a method derived from a faraway desert region in the east. Yes, precisely. It's a name that seems as though someone instructed you to christen it as such. Oliver and Kevin found themselves taken aback. The words spoken were sharp and felt like finely honed deductions. Thankfully, Philip chose not to delve further. Just a jest, he remarked, defusing the tension. General. Why are you attending this conference this time? You usually don't attend such events, do you? Kevin inquired, shifting the conversation. Well, indeed. I received an invitation. From Mr. Theodore, Philip responded. An invitation? Yes. Despite my lack of affiliation with their family or the Life School faction, they extended a personal invitation to me. Refusing would have been improper, so I decided to attend. Especially if it's Mr. Theodore. By the way, is your master going to be present? I heard rumors to that effect. Probably not. That's a pity. I was hoping to exchange greetings. Well, your presence here is remarkable enough. There's no reason not to come. Kevin answered, his emotions controlled. Though only a few words, his response seemed to carry a veiled meaning. Shortly after, the thick trees outside the window began to thin, gradually revealing their destination, a small tourist spot named Lake Village situated in halfway's inland. As illustrated in the pamphlet, Lake Village revolved around a sprawling lake with buildings and laboratories associated with the Life School and Life Alchemy departments scattered throughout. Upon arrival, their vehicle accelerated before halting in front of a massive yet somewhat weathered hotel perched on a hill at the heart of the town. The hotel, while initially grand, had succumbed to the ravages of time, exuding an air of faded elegance. Philip, who disembarked the car, commented, "It's rather somber, fitting for the central continent." "I agree, General. Thank you for the ride. We appreciate your assistance in making our journey comfortable," Kevin acknowledged upon stepping out alongside Oliver. "Even empty words of gratitude hold value. Do you have a schedule in mind for the half-month conference?" "What sort of schedule could there be?" "It'll likely involve leisurely observation of the intriguing presentations organized by the hosts. Don't neglect the social gatherings." For us wizards, a conference is more than just acquiring knowledge. Yes, I'm aware. I do plan on attending the social events. Good to hear. We'll run into each other on occasion then. While it's been a pleasure meeting you, I must bid you farewell here. I have various introductions to make. Understood. With farewells exchanged, Kevin and Philip embarked on separate paths. Following Kevin, Oliver carried their luggage into the hotel. Something about the place felt slightly askew. Oh. It's quite pleasant, isn't it? Oliver remarked as they entered the VIP room designated for special guests, toting Kevin's bags. While the exterior of the hotel appeared dimmed by age and the mist from the lake, the interior and rooms surpassed expectations. In fact, to be more accurate, they were exceedingly comfortable. Not only were they impeccably clean, but the beds and furnishings glistened as if new. Certainly. Pardon. Curious as he unpacked Kevin's luggage, Oliver sought clarification. I had a hunch this conference held special importance, but it seems even more so this time. That would explain the extra care put into its arrangement. Ah. Did you have a reason to think that? Didn't General Philip mention it earlier? His direct invitation, despite lacking family or faction ties. Yes. This leaves two possibilities. Either he's conducting research so extraordinary that it's stirring widespread astonishment, or he's proposing a profoundly significant deal. We may not know the specifics, but it must be substantial enough to warrant the involvement of organization leaders. Significant enough to draw the Grand Master's attention. Kevin's voice grew more resolute, his ambition kindled. It seemed rooted more in negative sentiments than positivity, hinting at some underlying concern with the life magic faction. But there's more than just concern. Unpacking the luggage and reflecting upon the earlier interactions, Oliver couldn't shake off a sense that something was amiss. There was an uncanny quality to them. Was it a disturbance in the life force and mana? The problem lay in his inability to precisely identify what exactly felt off. The sensation felt strangely familiar, reminiscent of something he had encountered before. Yet, the source remained elusive. And that wasn't the sole anomaly. The fog is quite dense, Oliver remarked, gazing out of the hotel window after completing his task with Kevin's belongings. Indeed, the entire town seemed engulfed in a misty shroud, the lake and haze imbued with magical attributes. This not only hindered normal vision but also posed an obstacle to the warlock's vision. Kevin concurred, it's due to the proximity to the lake. This area was once a popular tourist attraction centered around the lake. A tourist attraction? Yes, which explains the presence of such a grand hotel. The lake and its mana-infused mist were once renowned as tourist draws, believed to alleviate minor ailments through body soaking and inhalation. Oliver was taken aback by the revelation, finding it both astonishing and plausible. Currently, apart from the hotel accommodating Kevin's party, there were numerous inns of varying sizes scattered around the vicinity. But it doesn't strike me as a tourist spot. Aren't we, the conference attendees, the sole visitors? Well, you're right. It's been on a decline for the past 50 years. 50 years? What led to this decline? Did the lake or mist's properties diminish? Oliver inquired, casting his gaze out the window at the pure mana suffused within the lake and mist. The mist wasn't incredibly thick, yet its quality was remarkable, and the lake's mana concentration was equally impressive. No, it was due to a warlock. A warlock? Yes, the Pied Piper. Ah, close call. I'm sorry. I almost got carried away by our conversation. It would have been a waste of time. Oliver didn't object. He might have inquired further had Kevin been more forthcoming. It's not an urgent matter, but it's not leisurely either. We spent a night and a day on a boat and then several hours in a car. And Kevin glanced at his watch. In 3 hours, we'll have dinner, followed by the first social event of the conference 3 hours after that. Yes, that's correct. Oliver affirmed, well aware of the conference schedule he had received. I personally dislike social gatherings. They're quite draining, especially mentally. Still, I intend to attend. Until then, I want to conserve my energy. Do you get what I mean? Yes, I understand. Oliver responded, comprehending that Kevin wished to avoid any further fatigue for the day. Kevin seemed satisfied with Oliver's acknowledgement and continued. Great. Now, go ensure Felix and Derek have settled into their rooms, then proceed to your own and rest. Do you know where you're staying? Yes. VIP floor, corner room for the attendants. Good, you've got it right. I'll follow your instructions and then head to my room. Should I come to your room when it's time for the social event? Yes. You brought a suit and appropriate shoes for the event, correct? Oliver nodded. Yes, I packed them as per the provided list. Since I wasn't sure about the specifics, I just included what was recommended. By the tailor? No, by Mr. Edith. He chose the outfit for me when I expressed my uncertainty. That guy has a great sense of fashion, contrary to his appearance. Even to an excessive degree. The clock showed 8:50 p.m. as Kevin made this comment while stationed by the door, anticipating Oliver's arrival. The basis for Kevin's remark lay in Oliver's attire, which seemed exceptionally refined for someone in his position as a personal staff member to a professor. This choice of clothing could be rationalized by Edith's meticulous selection, influenced by his knowledge of Oliver's situation. From the suit and shoes to the belt and wristwatch, every element was of the highest caliber. In fact, it held its own against, or perhaps even outshone, Kevin's ensemble. What added an extra layer of humor was that despite his impeccable attire, Oliver carried himself with a remarkable naturalness. Usually, when clothing doesn't align with a person's demeanor, it generates an awkward atmosphere as if the clothes are wearing the individual. Yet, Oliver exhibited no such signs. It was as though he had an innate connection to his attire. Observing Oliver's appearance, Kevin's gaze prompted a question from Oliver, "Is something amiss, Professor?" Kevin shook his head, replying, "No, nothing's amiss. Except that your attire seems a bit extravagant for a regular staff member. Maybe Edith has some issues with me." Oliver responded, "He tends to have issues with almost everyone. Should I change into something else? Different clothes?" "Yes, I brought a few regular suits with me." Kevin considered, then stated, "No, something bold is better than something ordinary." Saying this, Kevin joined his researcher associates, Derek and Felix, to make their way to the top-floor social event at the hotel. The social hall, akin to the hotel rooms, exuded a sense of newness and grandeur. Everything, from the ambience to the temperature, humidity, and even the delicate scent in the air, was meticulously curated. The atmosphere alone had a mood-elevating effect. Inside the social hall, a mix of wizards, men in sharp suits, and women in dazzling dresses had already assembled. Derek murmured, "Truly splendid," under his breath. As part of the esteemed Redhill family of the Agni sub-faction, he seemed acquainted with most of the guests. In contrast, Oliver and Felix were at a loss, but Derek noticed and kindly provided explanations. Those individuals over there are renowned professors from Rokuri University. The conversing group belongs to the wizard families of the central continent. Oh. Is that the one master from the blood magic sub-school? Derek gestured towards a youthful-looking man with crimson hair. Despite holding the prestigious title of one master, he appeared remarkably young. The one master of the blood magic sub-school. Indeed. It's been a while since I've seen him. Likely because it's a newly established school, just a little over a decade old, they haven't engaged much externally. Derek, his astonishment evident, carried on explaining, with Felix and Oliver observing the guests in a tourist-like manner, following his lead. Most attendees of the event were high-ranking individuals, possessing substantial and high-quality mana, a testament to the influence of the life school. Oh, look, there are people from our magic tower. Derek pointed towards a cluster gathered in a corner of the social hall. Kevin recognized a few faces from his time at the magic tower. But the most familiar was Philip, who had chauffeured them earlier that day. Despite his advanced age, his imposing height and robust frame emitted a distinct presence, drawing people in like moths to a flame and forming a crowd. It was a testament to his considerable influence. Upon spotting Kevin, who had yet to engage with others, Philip waved cheerfully, beckoning him over. "Kevin! Join us over here." His booming voice, a stark contrast to the social hall's ambience, didn't seem to disturb anyone. Instead, it garnered surprise that he was taking such personal care of Kevin. "General." Kevin approached Philip with a composed demeanor and saluted. Unlike their initial encounter, Philip received the salute with the appropriate decorum, setting aside his usual jesting demeanor. A master of humor, he also understood the importance of seriousness. "Indeed, good to see you. It's a pleasure to cross paths here. Allow me to introduce Lieutenant Kevin." "Well, no, Professor Kevin Dunbara of the Magic Tower, now in active service. All of you working at the Magic Tower are acquainted with him, I presume." Philip naturally presented Kevin to the individuals he had been conversing with. Kevin extended formal greetings, and they responded with courtesy, acknowledging Philip's authority. Thanks to this, Kevin, who had been navigating the social hall without much interaction, finally managed to assimilate into the environment. The more one observed Philip, the more considerate he appeared. Huh. Mid-conversation, Oliver turned his head, detecting an unusual magical presence drawing near. Perhaps a bit frigid in nature? Oliver's line of sight reached the far end, revealing a scene where the crowd was parting, making way for an aged noblewoman. This noblewoman possessed silvery hair impeccably arranged, standing tall despite her years. Following behind her were several female wizards, including Yairali and attendants. "Ah, one Master Tilda. It's been some time." Philip approached the elderly woman, his unique and unreserved demeanor unchanged, and greeted her first. Tilda, the silver-haired elder, reciprocated Philip's greeting. "It has indeed been a while, General Philip." Two distinct personalities. Nonetheless, Oliver perceived an undercurrent of mutual respect between them. "Unexpectedly, I hadn't anticipated encountering Lady Tilda here. Did you, like myself, receive an invitation?" "Yes. It appears that Mr. Theodore has orchestrated something quite impressive." "Have any of the other one masters arrived?" "Not all of them. The one master of the Gaia school dispatched a representative due to limited external engagements, and as for the others—" "Oh, have you met him?" The pronoun him was a bit vague, but Philip grasped its meaning immediately. "Regrettably, it seems he won't be attending." Kevin. Philip called Kevin with a note of irritation, prompting Kevin, who appeared somewhat uneasy, to approach. Didn't he confirm he wouldn't be coming? Yes, that's correct. General. Greetings, one Master Tilda. It's an honor to make your acquaintance. In response to Philip's inquiry, Kevin replied and then respectfully greeted Tilda. Despite his courteous approach, Kevin harbored a sense of discomfort towards her, and Tilda, although distinct in character, displayed a similar unease. Perhaps it was only natural. After all, Kevin had mentioned defeating Tilda's family, the head of the Scatty school and Yareli's father, to gain entry into the tower. Tilda observed Kevin for a moment and accepted his greeting. Pleased to meet you. I've heard from Yareli that your teaching skills are quite exceptional. I merely fulfilled my duty. Master mentioned he couldn't attend due to personal research. He requested me to convey his regards. Research. Tilda, who had maintained a chilly countenance, displayed a slight widening of her eyes, clearly indicating curiosity. The fact that Merlin was engaged in research was indeed unexpected. Research from him. I find myself quite intrigued by that notion. As Kevin was poised to respond, a fresh voice interjected, an energetic, youthful voice. All heads turned towards a group of wizards representing Rokuri University. Oliver's eyes instinctively sought out Rose and lingered on her form. Among the Rokuri University attendees, she was the solitary familiar figure to Oliver and the sole person within this elegant ballroom whose emotions remained hidden from his eyes. Yet, the focus of the others was not on her. Their collective attention was directed towards a woman at the forefront of the assemblage, presumably the one who had spoken. Given the aura, she clearly occupied a position of significant stature. But she seems remarkably youthful. Oliver mused, scrutinizing the woman's appearance. However, his disquiet wasn't solely about her age-defying aspect. The abrupt entrance had taken everyone aback, inducing a state of stunned silence. Even the typically composed Kevin, the emotionally expressive Philip, the frosty Tilda all appeared so astonished that words eluded them. The reason behind this reaction remained elusive to Oliver. Thankfully, Philip soon dispelled the mystery. Could it be Dean Dejahi Durans of the Department of Life Alchemy? Yes, you are correct. Somehow you appear far younger than my memory recalls. Philip exclaimed, and Dejahi Durans responded with a smile tinted by an air of superiority. To everyone's surprise, the woman named Dejahi Durans was purportedly 64 years old at that juncture. Yet, her appearance easily passed for someone in her early 30s. She genuinely appeared half her actual age. Oliver could empathize with the astonishment of those who were privy to her true age. The gift of youth was a rarity few accomplished wizards could ever hope to regain. As if confirming this, the serenity of the ballroom was suddenly disrupted, akin to a tranquil pool struck by a plummeting stone, setting ripples through the atmosphere. Philip, Tilda, and others, all those who had intended to pay their respects to the prominent figures from the magic tower, swiftly shifted their focus, converging on the Dean of Life Alchemy, who had inexplicably donned a veneer of youth. Their actions resembled chicks instinctively following their mother's lead. On this evening, the social hall was alight with animated discussions. The customary exchange of pleasantries was overshadowed, replaced by an unrestrained fascination with the accomplishments in research attributed to the Life School faction and the Department of Life Alchemy. Though the pamphlet hinted at life extension and rejuvenation through physical alterations, none had anticipated the extent of the transformation. Yet, it's entirely reasonable. Thus, the social hall buzzed with fervent curiosity and an array of desires, feelings that Oliver inadvertently perceived. Phew, that's quite something. A moment later, Oliver, having departed the social hall, exhaled. It wasn't that he was uninterested in the wizard who had seemingly reclaimed her youth or the methods enabling such a feat. Given Oliver's current standing, role, and circumstances, he reasoned he wouldn't garner a satisfying explanation. Consequently, he chose to leave it be. In fact, when a curious wizard posed a direct question about whether the rejuvenation was linked to research conducted by the Life School faction and the Department of Life Alchemy, he merely offered a vague assurance that the answer would be provided during the official announcement with Theodore. Hence, finding it more prudent to explore other mysteries than that wouldn't yield immediate answers, Oliver sought Kevin's assent and promptly departed the social hall. One such enigma was the lake that generated mana-infused mist. Indeed, the mist here is quite dense, Oliver murmured while descending the hill beneath the hotel. Since it was a road for vehicles rather than pedestrians, he had to trek a considerable distance before reaching the village below. The fog seemed thicker in the lower reaches, where the village lay, than it had been at the hotel, and the added darkness further hindered visibility. This might explain the deserted streets. Nonetheless, Oliver wasn't there to engage with the local populace, so the emptiness didn't bother him. Thump. 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 Despite his constrained sight, Oliver consulted the map in the pamphlet and used the hotel as a reference point as he followed the road leading to the lake. Given that the lake was a tourist attraction, it was well indicated on the map, and the main road was straightforward to follow, leaving no room for confusion. Occasionally, he felt the scrutiny of onlookers from passing inns or houses, but without encountering any difficulties or unusual incidents, Oliver arrived at the lake through the dense forest. From a distance at the hotel, he had perceived that it was no ordinary mana-infused body of water. However, up close, it surpassed even those initial impressions. While not on the scale of the Land of Ice, the concentration of magic was substantial. Sufficiently potent for Oliver to harness and utilize without restraint. Upon closer inspection, he discerned that the lake's periphery and the village's surroundings remained relatively untouched. It appeared that areas unaltered by human intervention retained a more abundant reservoir of mana. While scrutinizing the expansive lake saturated with mana and its environs, Oliver spotted something perplexing. Activating his warlock's eyes, he identified a series of subterranean water veins extending deep beneath the lake's surface. These water veins were the conduits through which the lake's water circulated, branching out in all directions and encompassing the entire village. Far from being natural formations, they appeared purposefully designed. Reacting instinctively, Oliver extracted the pamphlet and a pen, cross-referencing his location to the map and commencing to mark it. Has it been 3 days? Rose spoke in a room at Lake Village's top-class hotel. Beside her were the Grand Master Theodore of the School of Life Magic, his grandson Carl, and the Dean Dejahi of the Department of Life Alchemy. Among the four, Rose looked the youngest without a doubt. The other three enjoyed some youthfulness through the skill of life magic, but compared to Rose, who appeared in her early 20s, they were much older. In reality, it was the exact opposite. Rose spoke with confidence. "May I dare ask our Grand Master, is the persuasion going well?" Theodore, who valued authority, scowled at the mischievous question that didn't feel respectful at all. But at the same time, he couldn't say anything. They were in an equal alliance. No, maybe Theodore was in a slightly uncomfortable position. Despite having knowledge, status, wealth, honor, power, influence, everything a human could possess, he was choked by the preordained destiny of death. To escape this absolute death, he needed their help. The help of the filthy, detestable warlock. Oh my! Being brought up so grandly, you really can't manage your expression. Well, when frowning gets everyone's attention in your life. How cute. It was an undeniably discomforting scene. A young woman, just over 20, toying with a man who appeared middle-aged but was in reality over 80, as though he were a mere child. Having never been treated like this in his life, Theodore's lips quivered with suppressed ire. Luckily, his sole family member, Karl, stepped in before his anger could manifest openly. Look at this. We are strictly allies. You are not our leader. If you want to maintain this relationship, keep your manners. If you defy manners again, I won't stand still. Karl's words carried the same air of haughty arrogance he had displayed within the tower, confidence born from both skill and lineage. However, beneath his exterior, Karl's nerves were taut. He knew that the youthful maiden before him was no ordinary woman, she was a warlock who had lived for hundreds of years. A wicked witch who used demonic power and knowledge to consume people, extending her lifespan. Of course, Rose wasn't unaware of this. She knew that Karl was afraid of her. Unlike her brother, who focused on black magic rather than magic, she was also a warlock. Rose withdrew with a smirk. I'm sorry. Being from a poor lumberjack family, I feel inferior when I see well-off housewives. I can't bear it without picking a fight. I sincerely apologize. Though everyone in the room recognized the insincerity in her words, none engaged in dispute. The pressing matter at hand eclipsed any urge for further bickering. Undeterred, Rose pressed on with her inquiry. Now I'll ask politely. Grand Master Theodore of the School of Life Magic, is the persuasion going well? Theodore glanced at Rose and began to speak. The individuals consumed by greed that you mentioned have been nearly all successfully persuaded. With his response, Theodore extracted the guest list for the conference and positioned it on the table. Several names were crossed out, indicating their completion. And what about those without lines? Rose questioned. They are individuals I haven't yet approached. Given their significance, I can't merely make casual attempts. The ones I'm unsure about persuading will be addressed individually and then collectively convinced at the end. Recognizing the wisdom in this approach, Rose refrained from further commentary. It was evident that carelessly revealing information could result in complications. Securing those who were more amenable to persuasion first to create a favorable situation was a key strategy. It does seem to be a sound plan, Rose mused. Shifting her attention to Dean Dejahi of Life Alchemy, who stood beside her, Rose continued, and how has your progress fared? Have you been met with success? Dean Dejahi, who officially maintained a student-dean relationship with Rose but had reversed roles in this context, replied, yes. We commenced our efforts before they did, as you are aware. Satisfied with the response, Rose turned her gaze to the list Theodore had presented, observing their accomplishments. Let's see. There are quite a few people to persuade at the end. Don't worry. There are only a few to be wary of, such as Roar and Tilda Isai. Well, that's a relief. If these people can't be persuaded and it's unavoidable, we'll divide them as promised. Since we promised. But you must hand over Kevin and his party to me, alive, as promised. That's simple. But I'm curious. Why? There are many other superior materials, why do you want to have an inferior red man? Do you have something to hide? Nothing to hide. I don't care about the man himself. It's his master that I'm interested in. Aha! I understand. Then, let's move as planned tomorrow. Mr. Theodore. I count on you. Gretel. Is this the water vein? Yes, it was hastily drawn so it's not precise, but it should be roughly similar. 2 days into the conference, during the afternoon, Derek, Felix, and Oliver toured the various venues and exhibition sites set up in the village. At this juncture, Oliver unveiled a map of the water veins he had managed to sketch over 3 days. Though hastily sketched on a pamphlet, it was easily recognizable thanks to the neat lines. According to what Oliver showed to Kevin, the artificially opened water veins were surrounding the whole lake village. It looks like a barrier, doesn't it? A barrier, you say? Don't you know? No, I understand the concept. It's a large-scale magic that uses a great amount of mana and magical circles to physically defend a specific space or cause confusion and block movement through illusions. I've read about it once in Elder's library. Although I didn't read it in detail. Indeed, Oliver had once read the relevant book in Merlin's library. Given its requirement of substantial time, mana, and stringent conditions for use, he had only schemed the concepts and variations, as it lay outside his primary area of interest. It's the same here. It's just that it seems like multiple barriers are mixed together. Can you mix barriers? If you have the skill to handle it. But I wonder who can handle such a large scale and such a complicated ritual. In essence, it was an exceedingly challenging task, even by Kevin's standards, who was highly skilled among the tower's masters. Kevin's brow furrowed with unease. The presence of such a barrier within a tourist village, particularly one that had experienced decline for nearly 5 decades, was perplexing. Perhaps it had been established during the village's prosperous days, but that explanation didn't entirely fit either. Even if the water veins had been opened during the village's golden era, consistent maintenance would have been necessary. Yet, according to Oliver, that wasn't the case. The water veins are flowing strongly, without obstruction. As Oliver relayed this observation, Kevin squinted his eyes, lost in contemplation. Zenon. Yes, Professor. You said the hotel staff seemed odd too, right? Yes. I can't explain it in detail, but the villagers seem to have something similar too. The villagers too? Yes, not all, but some. Like the hotel people, there's an inexplicable feeling of strangeness. Their emotions seem too regular, perhaps. But what bothers me the most is something else. What bothers you the most? Yes, I couldn't find the right time to say it, but the Rokuri University dash. Professor, are you not coming to the wide-range binding magic demonstration? It's about to begin. Derek and Felix arrived just as Kevin and Oliver were engrossed in their discussion, considering the current situation. Though the interruption was slightly irksome, given the schedule and upcoming available time, Kevin decided to postpone the conversation. I'm sorry. I was lost in thought. Derek shook his head as if it was okay. It's fine. I understand why you would be like that. The conference itself has been rather dull, especially compared to the appearance of Dean Dejahi on the first day. Derek expressed his dissatisfaction openly. He wasn't alone in this sentiment. After witnessing Dean Dejahi's sudden vitality on the inaugural day, the invited guests found the conference's subsequent schedule and content unexpectedly mundane. Consequently, the initial anticipation and excitement had waned, and many attendees regarded the event more as a sightseeing opportunity rather than a chance to witness impressive demonstrations. The dispersion of presentation venues and demonstration sites throughout the village only exacerbated the sentiment. Some even contemplated leaving early, yet most held on in anticipation of the forthcoming comprehensive presentations on life magic and life alchemy scheduled for the following day. Let's set our discussion aside for now and observe the demonstration, Kevin suggested to Oliver before melding into the crowd, heading toward the Rokuri University Department of Pure Magic's wide-range binding magic demonstration. The demonstration site was located on the village's outskirts, and a considerable crowd had already gathered. Though there weren't any high-profile figures present, notable figures like Philip Rohr, Tilda Isai, and others could be spotted intermittently. There's quite a turnout, Oliver remarked, noting a larger audience than anticipated. Magic isn't always sought for its destructive power. Non-lethal magic also holds its demand. Utilized in localized conflicts. Precisely. Kevin nodded in a confirming manner, and Oliver reciprocated with a satisfied nod, recognizing the extent to which he had absorbed knowledge. In his role as a personal assistant to the professor, Oliver engaged in tasks such as procuring research materials for Kevin, Derek, and Felix, as well as preparing coffee. Through these activities, he had garnered some insights into military magic research. Surprisingly, even among the Allied nations, including the United Kingdom, there existed a tendency to exercise restraint when employing force in their own conflicts, despite their involvement in wars around the world. While force was employed when deemed necessary, the frequency and intensity of its usage remained relatively low. This contrasted with the situation in the colonies. Oliver had yet to comprehend the rationale behind this distinction. What's the reason for the difference? Oliver observed the fog on the demonstration stage growing denser once more as the professor stepped onto it to present his research. Though imperceptible to the naked eye, the phenomenon was evident to a warlock like Oliver, who possessed the ability to perceive emotions and life force. Undoubtedly, this was an artificial phenomenon, not a natural occurrence. Cautiously, Oliver contacted Kevin. "Professor, I'm aware." Kevin's response came in hushed tones. While their conversation transpired, the fog had noticeably thickened. However, the lead professor on the stage had captured everyone's attention with his mono-infused voice. "We appreciate your presence, esteemed ladies and gentlemen, as you gather to witness our presentation. The focus of this demonstration is wide-area binding magic, a fundamental aspect of the pure magic school. As you're all aware, its principle is straightforward. It materializes physical force by interlinking magical particles akin to chains, thus ensnaring the intended target." The wizards in the audience, driven by their scholarly inclinations, immediately became fully engaged. However, our approach significantly augments both the scale and efficacy of this magic. It's a spell capable of subduing not only regular soldiers but also fellow wizards. With a flick of his finger, the presenting professor employed a pre-arranged device to project an image into the air. The image featured diagrams and concise explanations. Several wizards collaborated to initiate the spell, and once activated, it instantaneously ensnared both soldiers and war wizards who ventured onto its boundaries. The spell resembled a fusion of spider and bear traps. The crux of this magic lies in its ability to neutralize even a skilled wizard completely. A hand rose amid the assembly. Binding magic might ensnare a wizard, but isn't the term neutralize an exaggeration? Do you possess substantial evidence? Indeed, we do. The chain-based magic not only applies physical restraint but is also engineered to disrupt the flow of the target's mana. By disrupting the flow, it effectively suppresses the target's mana. This explanation piqued the interest of some, finding the argument persuasive. However, the ease of dismantling depends on the target's skill level. Consequently, we have refined the binding magic into 8 distinct stages to ensure efficient and effective usage. While it's not a flawless solution, our improvements have enhanced its efficacy to a certain extent. Notably, the 8th stage, though time-intensive, yields significant results. The notion was sound. Military magic needed to prioritize efficiency alongside effectiveness. Another wizard raised a hand to pose a query. Not a bad concept. But if a wizard possesses exceptional mana detection abilities, wouldn't they perceive it in advance, rendering it useless? An excellent question, and thank you for raising it. We shared the same concern, yet we devised a solution. We can excavate deep into the ground, rendering detection considerably more difficult. I fail to grasp. Digging to such depths would demand a substantial investment of time and labor, wouldn't it? For us, however, that suffices. The response was perplexing, causing suspicion to simmer. Simultaneously, the fog began to pulsate, evoking an impression of vitality. Like iron filings responding to a magnet, it reacted to a specific force, maneuvering in a distinct pattern. This culminated in the condensation of the mist into a white drapery that enveloped the vicinity like a white prison. Instinctively, Oliver knew it was reacting with an underground water vein. Yet, the phenomenon was astonishing. A large-scale magic that merged fog and water veins. While the precise outcomes remained enigmatic, the intricacy and range of the preparation signaled that this was no ordinary magic. Individuals lacking fundamental information found themselves in disarray and confusion. What's this? What's happening now? Excuse me, Professor. Do you know what this is? Despite the bewildered outcries, the presenting professor responded differently by forcefully driving his mana-charged hand onto the ground. Instantaneously, the deeply embedded magic responded, and an array of blue and purple magical chains sprang forth, ensnaring the nearby wizards. A stunned silence enveloped the scene. Several attempted to employ mana to shatter the magical chains, but as previously elucidated, none could manipulate their mana. The chains' finely woven mana impeded the flow of magic within the ensnared wizards. Though some could escape given time, the opponent seemed unwilling to wait. Shock. Earththorn. Just as the professor who activated the binding magic was poised to strike, Kevin, by compressing the emotions into his hand, forcefully shattered the magical chain and promptly cast a spell. A stone spear erupted from the ground, impaling the professor. Taken off guard, the professor hung suspended in midair, coughing up blood with a strangled sound. Humph! Kevin, his hand clasping the chains with black magic, unbound their mystical restraints. With a flourish of sorcery, he triumphantly vanquished his adversary, a contemptuous snort escaping him. His actions were a deliberate display of strength and composure, seamlessly aligning with the ethos of the Magic Tower, a place where projecting an aura of expertise beyond reality was paramount. Yet, beneath his composed exterior, an undercurrent of astonishment surged through Kevin. The fortuitous acquisition of proficiency in black magic at precisely this juncture, coupled with his rapid accomplishments, left him taken aback. In that fleeting moment, it was as though the very hands of a god had intervened. A god? Ha! Black magic! What in the world? Within the encompassing shroud of dense mist and ensnared by mystical chains, the assembly of wizards gaped at Kevin's emergence once again, their astonishment rekindled. Kevin comprehended their reaction all too well. In a community of wizards inclined to overlook many illicit endeavors for the sake of enlightenment, delving into the realm of black magic was sacrilege. Yet, Kevin opted to concentrate on the immediate crisis. His initial act was to preemptively assail the other wizards within the demonstration hall, including the professor. These magic practitioners had been primed to assail as per their instructor's command. Initiating his strategy, Kevin funneled magic down through his foot, interweaving earth and fire magic, resulting in stone spears erupting from the ground below his adversary's feet. Quag-wag-wag-wag-wag-wag. Repeatedly, spears forged from soil and rock surged upwards, impaling many foes, yet these were no ordinary wizards. A fair number agilely sidestepped or soared above Kevin's offensive with an almost animalistic dexterity, fueled by their own sorcery. Evidently, they were not run-of-the-mill individuals. Not that it truly matters now. Firecracker. Kevin intoned, activating the fusion of earth and fire magic. Explosions rocked the stone spears, attacking nearby adversaries with flames, searing heat, and shards of debris. The once stabbing spears had transmuted the area into a sea of fire, dealing substantial damage to opponents whose vigilance had slackened after evading the initial assault. A mere handful of survivors emerged, but overwhelmed by the ferocity, they beat a hasty retreat, their resolve shattered. Confirming this development, Kevin again seized the emotions in his grasp and forcibly sundered the magical bonds constricting Derek. Professor. Liberated from the magical shackles, Derek inquired with an expression marked by a rare surprise. Kevin opted for audacity. Bold-faced lies found their footing when delivered unflinchingly. I acquired the skill during my tenure as a war wizard, solely for operational and research purposes. No need for astonishment. But, yet, do you think this is the time to discuss this? Kevin addressed Derek in the same manner he once did soldiers on battlefronts. Curiously, this proved an apt response. The circumstances paralleled a state of war. Within a domain where Landa's Magic Tower, Gallows Rockery University, and wizards' families from across the continent converged, the fact that the host, Rockery University itself, had initiated aggression amounted to nothing short of warfare. Fortuitously, Derek perceived the gravity of the present situation. Kevin's engagement with black magic might have been a minor personal matter, but the ongoing turmoil transcended normalcy, edging into an unsettling madness. And such madness can't be committed by a madman alone. Surely, it's related to the higher UPS. Kevin gazed into the encompassing fog, his certainty unwavering, as it held the entire vicinity in its enigmatic grip. Despite his inability to gauge its precise potency and influence, the magnitude alone conveyed that this was no ordinary obstruction. A barrier of such scale couldn't have been conjured by anyone less than one master, or perhaps even a grand master. Swift action became imperative in Kevin's mind. Following Derek's lead, he deftly sundered Felix's magical restraints. Without delay, he turned and beckoned Oliver to his side. "Zenon, you shall dash." "I'm all right," Oliver interjected, his gaze fixed on Kevin. He had, in fact, already escaped the magical shackles unaided. This was a stark contrast to the majority of nearby wizards, still ensnared and voicing their frustrations. Felix, his face drained of color, couldn't contain his astonishment. "How did you manage to do it?" "By manipulating the mana flow and aligning the spell with the disruptive mana interference," Oliver responded casually, articulating a technique that seemed self-evident yet shouldn't be taken for granted. Initially, Kevin's method of using black magic to break the chains had been intricate. Indeed, among the formidable wizards present, only a handful had managed to liberate themselves from the magical confines independently, albeit belatedly, underscoring the complexity. A mere staff member, neither a student of the tower nor an official wizard, displayed such finesse in mana control. Even Derek and Felix, who were well aware that Oliver was far from ordinary, found themselves newly amazed. Yet, this awe soon became secondary. The surrounding mist quivered and transformed into a white void, swallowing the surroundings whole. Doesn't it strike you as unjust? Within the hotel's uppermost floor, now repurposed as a conference chamber, Theodore Brandt, the head of the School of Life Magic, aired his thoughts openly. Despite his appearance belying only half his actual age, he peered through the veiled window. Seated behind him were Philip Rohr, honorary Grand Master of the Pure Magic School, and Tilda Isai, the one master of the Skadi Subschule. They had come here alone, without agents, as requested, and Theodore felt a little gratitude for that. It was a sign of trust in him, a rare virtue in these times. Mr. Theodore, may I ask you 2 questions? The head of the Rohr lineage, Philip, addressed Theodore with the respect befitting his age and station. Alike in courtesy, Theodore responded. Please, proceed. You possess the privilege of inquiry. What precisely do you signify by unjust? Everything. Everything. Indeed. The present, unjust societal framework and all inequitable tenets. Tell me this, who commands the most profound knowledge among humanity? Who wields the supreme power? We wizards. Correct. Then, who ushered in humanity's golden era? Again, wizards. Yes. It is us, the wizards. The prevailing currency of influence in our world is magic, and we hold dominion over it. Yet observe where we stand today. Does it appear logical to you? Theodore's words resonated with authentic resentment and indignation. Despite this era marking the zenith of wizardry's prosperity, I have never comprehended why mere capitalists, who possess naught but wealth, and conniving politicians can rival us, those who command magic. Even the royalty, who have no achievements other than being born, are elevated above us. Is this truly just? Philip and Tilda, both pillars of the magical order, remained silent. Theodore's audacious declarations failed to startle them. Having perused Theodore's treatises in their youth and engaged with him personally, they understood his disposition and harbored ideas. Thus, his statements didn't catch them off guard. However, Philip and Tilda, being wizards themselves, found a certain resonance with Theodore's ideas, though they held differing perspectives to some extent. Nevertheless. No response. Do you believe I'm mistaken? Not in the least. While we may diverge in particulars, I concur wholeheartedly in the assertion of wizard superiority. Our capabilities transcend those of ordinary humans. We are exceptional. Your words gratify me, General Philip. But what do you imply by unjust? Even as he cast his gaze upon the ominous fog beyond the window, Philip maintained his composure and posed the query. To comprehend this elder statesman of the contemporary magical society, a candidate for the esteemed archiver position in times past, one had to acknowledge his remarkable wizardly prowess. The predetermined lifespan imposed upon humankind by God. Does this not vex you? Each of us stands as beings unashamed, wielding knowledge, power, and accomplishments, a lifetime of dedication. Yet behold, I, and indeed each one of you, grapple with the inexorable curse of aging, drawing nearer to death. Is this not unjust? Theodore's anger and apprehension were palpable. Understandably so. Even if his knowledge extended through generations, even if he had amassed a treasury of wisdom to momentarily rewind youth, and even if he had fortified himself to quell natural catastrophes, the absolute and inescapable specter of death, etched in the heavens, bore down upon him. How futile and inequitable this is! Yet what incites greater ire and terror in me is another matter altogether. Gradually, Theodore's voice swelled with emotion. The prospect that I might perish without attaining the pinnacle I aspired to. Is that not a grievous tragedy? To expire without scaling the heights one tirelessly pursued and single-mindedly focused upon. What manner of divine justice is this? What manner of God? Disregarding our exertions and impeding our accomplishments. Closer to a bellow than a plea, it proved surprisingly the most compelling utterance he had made thus far. Philip and Tilda, too, were among those who had yet to attain the peaks they sought, much like many wizards. They were intimately familiar with that indescribable fear. However, if one could break free from the celestial predestination, a path unfurls. Liberation from finite existence, the embrace of eternal life, liberation from the curse of aging, and the acquisition of time to reach one's zenith. An eternity of time. An intriguing narrative on the whole. Tilda, master of the Scatty school, broke the silence and responded. As ever, she radiated an icy ambience that concealed her thoughts, rendering them inscrutable. A society that is unfair and not proportional to ability, a principle that does not reward effort. I roughly understood what the Grand Master wants to say. I anticipated your comprehension. And if my assumption is accurate, it seems you aim to rectify this issue. Indeed. And I implore your assistance in doing so. A declaration as audacious as it was confrontational, proposing the overthrow of the existing social structure and even a challenge to divine ordinances. Yet neither Philip nor Tilda exhibited fluster, underscoring their seasoned wizardry. How do you intend to proceed? Sharing this with us implies you possess both a plan and a method. Theodore pivoted to face Philip and Tilda. I shall establish a new tower in Lake Village, not as a loose coalition, but as a harmonious institution, resurrecting an authentic tower comprised solely of genuine wizards. Will you then engage in conflict with the nation? Unnecessary. Merely prepare for the forthcoming new era. A new era. The term was abrupt, even preposterous, yet Philip and Tilda didn't dismiss it. They understood that Theodore was radical but not given to nonsensical speech. A new era, you say? The world is on the brink of transformation. The inquiry didn't dissipate their skepticism, it merely added to it. But that was not the conclusion. And amid that turmoil, only the chosen shall endure. Extend your hand to me, and I shall grant you youth and immortality. The assertion seemed surreal, yet Philip and Tilda didn't outright reject it. He might be haughty, but his pride was so immense that falsehood seemed inconceivable. It's just the two of us here. Have you managed to convince the other tower associates? I'm referring to the masters of the Agni and Enlil schools. My grandson is working on persuading them. They're skilled wizards, but not quite at your level. Do you believe your grandson can sway them? My grandson. And even if he can't, it doesn't matter. If they resist, there are methods to bring them into alignment. It seems like our situations are parallel. Not merely similar, but the same. However, don't misunderstand. It's the path I'd rather avoid. I hold you in high regard. So make the right decision. Theodore's words flowed with confidence, an almost haughty air, while Philip stroked his forked beard. May I pose another question? Is this the second inquiry? No, a newly arisen doubt. What is it? You mentioned granting youth and immortality, but does the Life School faction possess the technology to achieve that at present? To be truthful, it's still in its experimental stages. I've gathered, developed, and augmented various technologies, but a critical element remains elusive. Nevertheless, it's a puzzle that's on the brink of resolution. On what grounds do you assert this? I've secured the finest ingredients. Theodore responded, exuding certainty, as if everything unfolding before him revolved around this fact. I don't comprehend, these finest ingredients. You don't need to delve that deeply. That's my concern to handle. Yours is whether to embrace my proposition. In the end, Theodore pressed for an answer, almost as though his earlier remark about employing different means if they declined was no idle threat. Philip chuckled, relinquishing the shrinking spell he'd cast on the spear he held, then casting an enhanced growth incantation. Lengthen. As Philip uttered the command, the spear elongated with swiftness akin to a bullet, extending outward. Whiz-bang. However, Theodore nimbly arrested the spear with his conjured magical hand. Regrettable. Truly. I anticipated a deeper understanding from you. Extend. Upon Philip's utterance, the spear, now stretched, expanded manifold times, rending Theodore's magical grasp apart. Huh. Huh. Theodore observed his torn hand and emitted a sound, a mix of surprise and nonchalance. The unexpected event seemed to be taken lightly, and it wasn't just mere posturing. From his being, Theodore exuded a concentrated torrent of mana, weaving intricate spell formations around him. These formations converged on his arm, the core of the injury. The interwoven patterns of magic reacted in harmonious resonance, giving birth to a mechanical hand sculpted from enchanted particles. In mere moments, Theodore's wounded arm was restored to its unharmed state. This was a precision magic, one demanding utmost focus, a fusion of pure magical arts and life school magic. Yet, for Theodore, a grand master and an esteemed elder in the current magical society, it appeared almost effortless. Grenade. Philip Rohr channeled mana into his enlarged spear, an incantation on his lips. The force, mirroring its master's temperament, coursed vibrantly down the length of the spear, converging at its tip. It detonated akin to a grenade, scattering myriad shards in all directions. Ba 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 bang. Philip erected a magic barrier, deflecting the projectiles, his gaze steady on the outcome. As the dust from the blast began to settle, Theodore emerged a figure who had thwarted both the explosion and its fragmentation through a magical shield that materialized as defensive armor. His demeanor was strikingly composed. Impressive. I was taken aback as well. Even with my understanding of the Rohr family's techniques, it proved perplexing. If knowledge was the sole determinant of victory, the desk-bound wizard poring over tomes would stand unrivaled. With a single hand gesture, Rohr shrunk his sword and propelled it with formidable strength, dispelling the size-altering incantation. Falchion, Viking sword, Bowie knife, gladius, longsword, and more arrayed in magical augmentation, these varied blades streaked through the air, aimed at piercing Theodore. Yet, Theodore unleashed his veiled, colossal mana reserve, erecting a barrier both pliable as clay and dense as granite. It halted the airborne weaponry in mid-flight. An adept offensive. Employing magic for projectile throws surpasses rudimentary magical bullets. Most magical barriers would easily yield. However, they can also be turned against you. Like this. With a snap of Theodore's fingers, the specially enchanted swords splintered into dozens of fragments. In this state, Theodore infused them with mana and propelled them back. Evade. Facing two thwarted surprise assaults and an onslaught of steel fragments, Philip didn't flinch. He promptly retrieved a large sword from his possession, suffusing it with mana, then swung with all his might. Crash, 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 crash. The blade, nearly a structural monolith, cleaved through a hotel wall, hurtling toward Theodore's magical defense with unrestrained force, the intent to pulverize it via sheer physical dominance. Yet Theodore nimbly sidestepped the blow, executing a maneuver almost divine. You believed my youthfulness was mere appearance. Dodge alone wouldn't suffice. Capitalizing on the colossal blade as a stepping stone, Theodore closed the distance in a split second, conjuring an electrical spell that ignited in his hand. Although Philip discarded his great sword and retrieved an axe, his actions fell fractionally too late. As Theodore advanced, the electrical incantation flared with brilliant luminosity. Whiz zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. A high-voltage surge, potent enough to liquefy metal, threatened to scorch Philip's visage. However, Tilda, who had been observing, intervened in the nick of time to shield him. With both hands, she sculpted an ice barrier, intercepting Theodore's assault. Notably, Tilda's ice barrier didn't merely neutralize Theodore's electrical surge, it absorbed and attempted to corrode it. In retaliation, Theodore, undeterred, swiftly transmuted his electrical magic into ice, fusing the two forces in a clash of control. It was a bold challenge to pit himself against the one master of the Scatty school in an icy confrontation. Astoundingly, Theodore wrested dominion over the ice magic from Tilda. Scray-a-op. As the ice, pilfered from Tilda, threatened to ensnare her, Philip's axe swept forth, interposing to rescue her. The blade cleaved through the air, aimed straight for Theodore's neck. Theodore, whose abilities far outstripped those of the average wizard, evaded the strike with a movement akin to a beast, creating considerable distance in the blink of an eye. Thank you for your assistance earlier, one Master Tilda. Gratitude to you too, General Philip. Observing Theodore warily, Philip and Tilda exchanged pleasantries, shedding their unwieldy outerwear. Despite teetering on the brink of Theodore's trap, rather than succumbing to intimidation, they opted to unite their efforts and confront him. A fitting course of action for leaders of their stature. Theodore acknowledged their resolve. Indeed, both of you are formidable, not only in skill but in spirit. You faced near-death situations, yet your response. That's why it's even more lamentable. Why do you spurn my offer? Aren't you apprehensive about unattainable aspirations and the inevitability of death? Do soldiers fear death? I want to reply like that, but honestly, I am scared. Then why? Everything in this world has its limits, Theodore. To the second question I asked earlier, answer me now. Have you colluded with life alchemy? Or with a warlock? Philip inquired, his gaze shifting to the fog barrier that had been vexing him. For even Theodore, achieving such an endeavor solo would be implausible. Your words have taken a lighter tone, General Philip. I respected you for your mastery as a wizard. There's no reason to extend respect to a traitor. Answer me. Although Philip implored for an answer, Theodore remained silent. Instead, he turned his gaze toward Tilda. Why did you decline? Don't you also aspire to push boundaries? No, my rationale is more practical. The Isai family values pragmatism. Pragmatic reasons. I acknowledge your prowess as a wizard, but I doubt you can surpass Merlin. I'm not naive enough to entrust my family's fate to the losing side. Tilda's words were as frosty as her mastery, causing a pang in Theodore akin to a toothache. A pang so acute it almost incited a surge of rage. In fact, he was so angered that he found himself smiling. Ha ha ha. Very well then, I can't force it. With this response, the trio atop the hotel unleashed a torrent of magic. Moments later, the establishment was veiled in a shroud of massive weaponry and pallid ice. Krurururu dash. Snap. With a swift strike of his tonfa, Oliver dispatched a chimera, a grotesque amalgamation of canine skull and human form, or rather, what had been a villager. The chimera, undaunted by any onslaught or threat, lay defeated on the ground, its struggle futile. Confirming this, Oliver pivoted to address Kevin. "This side is taken care of." Kevin, who had strewn numerous charred cadavers about, responded. Among these figures were chimeras, but also several presumed wizards of the school of life magic, individuals he had taken down himself. "You've worked hard." "Not at all." "But are you all right?" Oliver asked, piercing through Kevin's complex emotions. "I'd like to say I'm fine, but honestly, I'm not. I don't even know where I am." Kevin's voice emerged against the backdrop of fog-covered terrain. Indeed, this was the reality. The front, rear, flanks, and even the heavens were swathed in a dense mist, rendering it impossible to discern one's surroundings. They had stood on the demonstration grounds mere moments ago. Yet, when the fog encroached, they were cast into this realm accompanied only by Oliver. If he hadn't instinctively pulled Oliver close, he might have been marooned alone. Is this how they intend to scatter us and defeat us one by one? It's simple but effective. Kevin dissected the magic, flow, and pattern inscribed within the fog, piecing together the enemy's strategy. It was unmistakably a barrier spell, physically segregating space, infused with elements of spatial magic. Yet, this was no ordinary spell. Even if they harness the lake's mana to control it, the scale is ample to engulf Lake Village. Moreover, the spell's potency is formidable. I can't fully grasp it. Kevin was dumbfounded by the inscrutable magic's magnitude, pondering who might be behind this. Despite the assembly of adept wizards, a mere handful were capable of wielding such magic. Uniting the wizards could have been logical, but considering how the fog had swallowed them earlier, the probability was slim. In the wake of the thwarted ambush, they responded promptly. In a collective, such rapid reflexes were challenging. Or did they entrust authority to an individual? Even if so, conventional expertise wouldn't. Wait, what am I doing? Kevin reproached himself for his folly. He had acted haphazardly, ensnared by a profoundly aberrant circumstance. Parsing the fog barrier and identifying the culprit were indeed paramount, but more urgently, he needed an escape plan. Despite having vanquished dozens of adversaries, Kevin found himself ensnared in this place, akin to a trapped insect. Foremost, his immediate priority was escape. But going at it alone won't be easy. Zenon. While Kevin assessed the situation and his potential actions, he beckoned Oliver. Unusually, while Kevin was lost in thought, Oliver was engaged in examining the interior of a chimera he had subdued earlier, employing a checkered dagger to dissect it. Having dissected countless subjects himself, Kevin couldn't help but scowl given the present circumstances. "What are you doing?" "Something was bothering me, so I decided to take a look." With hands stained crimson from the crude dissection, Oliver responded in his customary manner and accent. This very casualness amplified the eerie factor. He appeared to be performing a mundane task. "What's bothering you?" "It's an enhanced human." "What?" "The internal structure bears resemblance to the enhanced human C-03 I encountered at Mountain Pace. The subtle anomalies in life force and mana appear linked to this." Kevin inquired, eyeing the chimera, its human body crowned with a dog's head. "But didn't you mention a cow's head at Mountain Pace?" "Yes, it was a cow there." However, this is a dog. Seemingly designed for combat rather than labor. Oliver conjectured, a sentiment that didn't surprise Kevin. The involvement of the school of life magic wasn't novel in such affairs. The shocking aspect was their entanglement in this conundrum. They might be eccentric, but stooping to this level. Why? As Kevin mused, Oliver voiced his skepticism. It's puzzling, though. What is? Even the chimeras used to fear me, but these came at me. Could it be due to the brain surgery? Oliver indicated the surgical scar tracing from the creature's temple to the rear of its head. Perhaps that held some truth. After all, the true seat of a human's essence wasn't the heart but the brain. Well, in my view, our primary concern should be escaping from here, Kevin asserted resolutely, apprehensive of the conversation drifting off course again. Fortunately, Oliver comprehended instantly, shelving his personal curiosity. He rose from his place, wiping his blood-stained hands on his tattered attire. The pedestrian nature of his actions sent a shiver down Kevin's spine. Apologies, Professor. No worries. I've assessed the situation in any case. It appears the School of Life Magic, host of the conference, and the Department of Life Alchemy are responsible for this. Oliver nodded, his suppositions evidently aligned with Kevin's. It wasn't a puzzle requiring considerable acumen to solve. I'm unsure of their motives, but one fact is clear, we're ensnared entirely. The fog itself doesn't hurt us, but it perfectly traps us so we can't escape. Plus, it can be used to transport us wherever the enemy wants, making us as good as caught in their hands. I think the same. It seems to be a very complicated mixture of basic barrier magic with spatial magic. Exactly. That's the problem. If we can't handle spatial magic, we can't get out. Kevin vented his frustration. Among the spatial school's constituents, scarcely 30% were adept in spatial magic. In many ways, it was the most challenging barrier. While an overpowering magical onslaught could distort the barrier itself, that wouldn't be prudent. Such an approach could exhaust both stamina and mana, rendering them susceptible to subsequent assaults. Alternatively, the wizards behind this expansive and complex spell could potentially converge upon them. Simply idling here isn't an option either. As Kevin ruminated anew, Oliver suddenly approached the fog and extended his hand to touch it. Then he remarked, I think I can interfere with the magic, so I can make use of the barrier.